Assalamu alaikum dear audience, this is Sanobar Sultan and here we are on Sanobar's World. So today the topic of our discussion is war of choice, near enemies and what mediation. So basically the ongoing Iran-US conflict. The first thing is this war, this reaction by Iran to the US invasion is unprecedented in the history of US. US with all its invasions, be it Japan, be it Vietnam, be it Afghanistan or Iraq, has never faced such a reaction to its imperial designs, unlike Iran, which has completely shred any legitimacy to any legal means to be used by the US, such as the Article 51 of the United Nations Security Council that was used in Iraq, that Donald Trump, the president, did try to use his NATO allies to collectively attack Iran. So Iran is looks like, this is a country, this is a nation with thousands of history, which is not just angry at being attacked by an imperial power, something that they have chanted in as slogans since the revolution, as they say, death to America, death to Israel. But more important than being attacked is as if the death of deterrence, that being Iran, just by being Iran, just by knowing how many proxies it has, how widespread its satellites and proxies are throughout the Arab world, knowing what it holds what meaning it holds to the Shiite community all across the globe. So just by being Iran itself was not a deterrence enough. So that's the message that came across, and that is giving a much more bigger reaction, is providing this type of reaction to the US invasion. So first of all, this is unprecedented in the history of US to get a reaction like this for any of its invasions. Another thing that needs to be discussed about this conflict is what were the issues and what were the non-issues that have become issues, that have become central issues. Now, first of all, the Straits of Hormuz was a strategic point that that analysts used to talk about, but this was a non-issue before this war. Turns out now the Straits of Hormuz is the only issue now, which was actually a non-issue at the beginning of the war. Right now, and the biggest issue what has become is that Iran is now charging a toll price, a toll fee of $2 million for every passing vessel. And just today, the president of the United States said that US would charge 20% to the passing vessels. So which has obviously caused much an economic earthquake to the global oil market, which is being felt throughout everywhere. And what was the issue? Now, the Straits of Hormuz was a non-issue that has now become an issue. The issue currently was the Gaza conflict, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which seems like which is getting so much backlash from the public, and no end to the human rights abuses that are happening, and the annexation of territory by Israel, and what are the prospects of the Board of Peace that was made that doesn't even have a Palestinian representation in it. The third thing, which has always been an issue, was a nuclear Iran, but that was not a recent issue. That has been an issue for nuclear Iran since Netanyahu came to power, but this is not an impending issue. This could have been an imminent issue maybe down the line, decades later. But to bring this up was not a very urgent issue at the moment. So, like a lot of people have said, that the Iran war is a war of choice. So this is not a war of necessity. This is not even a war of preemption. Doesn't even more like the Iraq issue, which was the war of preemption. I mean, this is just a war of choice and diversion from domestic problems, such as Iran has its own, the unrest that Iran is facing because of the youth, which does not feel aligned anymore with the Ayatollahs, the generation of the Ayatollahs or the revolution. Israel because of its ongoing conflict. US because of an unconventional precedent, polarization of society, the release of Epstein files, which details very important people in those files and their role in human trafficking of girls. So this is the scenario that was existing. Just to mention a highlighted point in the Iran-US conflict. So Iran and US have never directly faced any confrontation. The last time which was highlighted is during the Iran-Iraq war, which is another point that Iran's last, this is the second time that Iran is in a direct conflict. The last time after the revolution that Iran has been in a conflict was the Iran-Iraq war. After the revolution, during the Saddam Hussein regime, and the Saddam Hussein regime was backed by the US and provided weapons by the US. Turns out during the Reagan administration, there was the Iran-Contra affair scandal, which basically brought to light that Iran was also being supplied weapons by the US. So both parties were being provided weapons by the US. So that was the Iran. Right now doesn't seem like there's any back channel diplomacy going on directly between Iran and US. So basically what you're seeing right now are basically diplomatic points being put out on Social Truth or Twitter, just to put it out there that there's no track to diplomacy going on. So Iran has the last memory of a war for a generation that is alive is the Iran-Iraq war that went on for several years. So this is the second direct war that Iran has faced, and Iran really learned a lot about its strategic pitfalls during the Iraq war, which does look like they've really come up with a lot of new things to do. And so this is the backdrop of the situation, unprecedented. The major point about Iran is that it is a theocratic government, and it is based on ideology. So the model of government is based on ideology, and ideology, just as Israel, as you know, Israel is not just a Jewish country, a country made up of a Jewish population. It is also a theocratic country, a Jewish theocratic country which believes in greater Israel and the return of the Messiah. So does Iran. Iran also believes in that. Iran also believes that it is of a return, that it is, so there's a whole theocratic belief system that they have about an Armageddon, and a Muslim belief, by the way, of an Armageddon that would eventually happen, and the return of Jesus Christ. So this is theocracy, ideology mixed with politics, mixed with strategic choke points such as Straits of Hormuz. It's really enmeshed, and pretty, just to put it simply, crazy. I mean, I've never come across what's going on. Nobody knows what's going to happen now. People are just reading on Twitter. Okay, so is there a deal? Is there not a deal? What's happening? So the second aspect is, apart from all this major chunk, is the concept of near enemies and far enemies. What Iran has done, and is unprecedented in their reaction of as a tool of war, was attack the Arab countries, which were providing bases to the U.S., who are strategic partners to the U.S., and U.S. claims to give them security umbrella. Now, near enemies and far enemies is a concept in international relations where used by non-state actors. So, for example, in Pakistan, if the TTP or Al-Qaeda is attacking the state of a Muslim country, so these non-state actors claim that they are attacking the Muslim states because these Muslim states are an ally of a far enemy which they cannot reach because of geographical constraints. Now, right now, as you know, there's a geographical constraint to Iran reaching US. I mean, US has not faced any loss of infrastructure. No missile has reached US because of geographical constraint. The loss that has happened has been to countries in the Middle East with geographical proximity. So because non-state actors cannot reach the far enemy, they attack the near enemy because they consider the near enemy as an ally of the far enemy. That makes the near enemy also an enemy. So Iran has employed this concept of near enemy versus far enemy, that the Arab states, by providing bases to the US, by being allies to the US of a far enemy which they cannot reach because of geographical constraint, is by default then becomes an enemy and a legitimate target. This type of rogue behavior was seen by non-state actors, but has not been witnessed by an actor in state politics. So this is the concept that they have employed, and Iran, after the reaction of no barred reaction, wants to also receive an applause in terms of, if you see it not in the dynamics of which country has a bigger soft power or which country has more say in the media, rather than if you just see it in a vacuum where between a big power and a small power, it wants an applause that it's not receiving. So the applause that they want is going to be received by the public and by the stronghold that Iran has in the hearts of such as the Shiite community around the globe, or Muslims around the globe, who do feel frustrated at their own government's bonhomie with Western countries amidst the ongoing Palestinian conflict. So you see the processions that happened just now by the burial of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the Ayatollah and his family, and how millions of people showed up on the street. Many social media influencers from around the world were invited to cover this procession of funeral, and how the caskets of the Shaheed were paraded from city to city to Iraq, and then finally to its resting place of Mashhad, which will obviously become which will silence the dissenting voices or tone down the dissenting voices in Iran and give more legitimacy to the revolution. And of course, Mashhad would again become, and Iran itself, more opportunity for religious tourism, which it all is already uh, is. It's a hub of religious tourism apart from Saudi Arabia and Karbala in Iraq. And for the international media, the social media influencers and media that were invited to Iran to cover this funeral of the Ayatollah and his family, to see the level of damage to infrastructure and historical buildings, UNESCO buildings that were declared World Heritage, that have been done by two, and also the schoolgirls, bombing of the schoolgirls, girls' school that happened. So all of this is seen as what is real is what is on the ground, rather than what is on media. And this is seems like a very dangerous situation of a war that doesn't seem to be ending. Now, what are the last thing that we are going to talk about is what mediation. Basically, this is more of an exclamation. This is not to question the intention of the mediators. The mediators being the prime mediator being Pakistan, which hosted the Islamabad talks, and everybody flew in from around the world to cover the Islamabad talks. But nothing happened then in Switzerland, then, and the efforts that were being done by Islamabad, by Pakistan and Qatar. But you see what Pakistan is, frankly speaking, Pakistan doesn't have much diplomatic feathers that it can say that it has won diplomatic wars. Iran, on the other hand, this is not how Iran does diplomacy. Neither Pakistan nor US have much diplomatic, their style of diplomacy is not the way Iran deals with diplomacy. Europe, on the other hand, has way more experience dealing with Iran diplomatically than America or any Arab country. Europe has been dealing with the enrichment program of US, the IAEA, teams that used to go to inspect the enrichment in Iran and the nuclear facilities. So Europeans really understand the style of diplomacy that Iranians have, which would come as a bit of an embarrassment for Pakistan, because Pakistan created a whole environment and everything was built up as if Pakistan was the main, as a champion of diplomacy, which has done that. Pakistan has done such a milestone, like this is such a big achievement. They were able to do it as being mediators, but basically the only role that they are now been left to is acting as a messenger between the US and Iran. But this is not because, just to say that the issue is not to embarrass Pakistan. The issue is, this is how Iran is. Iran doesn't do diplomacy like this. I mean, after everything that US has done to them, and obviously they have a lot of pride, thinking that one day of talks and just wrap it up and take pictures. This is not how Iran does diplomacy. Iranians really go into nitty-gritties. And like I said, Europeans have way more experience dealing with Iranians, and they know how meticulous they are with every detail, every technical aspect. So obviously there's no deal right now with the bashing done by Donald Trump every day on Social Truth about Straits of Hormuz, which was never an issue but has now become an issue, and Iran saying that it has total control of Straits of Hormuz. It will never let go of the Straits of Hormuz. Again, don't know where this is going, but this is a very interesting times that we are witnessing. But one thing is for sure, that this is unprecedented, an unprecedented reaction to a US invasion, an unprecedented reaction by Iran, by a smaller power to a bigger power, and the kind of damage that it has caused, not just to the far enemy, to Israel, to the near enemy, to the near enemies, to Israel, and economically. And lastly, as being the sole champion in the eyes of Muslims around the world, who see it as a Muslim country standing up to an infidel nation, or infidel nations, Israel and US, who feel that their governments are in bonhomie with these Western countries and do not reflect the interests of Muslims. So this is what Iran has done, not just shown its power, but swayed its main audience, its main target audience, which is Muslims. So this is my analysis of what's going on. Obviously, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Let's see what happens. But just the bottom line is that the reaction by Iran is unprecedented. So thank you very much, dear audience. I shall see you all very soon. Take care. Bye bye.